So the guest on our show today is someone that I gather a lot of inspiration from. He is a branding guru. He is none other than Professor Isaac Jacob. He is a professor at the KJ Somaiya Institute of Management in India and a renowned author. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So Professor Isaac Jacob, thank you so much for making it out to Business Conversations with Shubhika and for your time today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Shubhika, for having me over on this wonderful platform, Business Communication with Shubhika. It's indeed my privilege to be on this particular platform. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me over, please.
Our pleasure. So getting into this right away, Professor, can you tell us a little bit about your background and yourself?
Oh, I am actually not a career professor to start with. In fact, I started in the industry,
Right.
and I spent over 30 odd years in the industry in various verticals. For instance, I started in advertising with Ogilvy, then went on to brand management with Mattel in India, and then subsequently went on to other areas like Puma and various other platforms, for instance, as such. So in this entire 30 odd years that I worked in the industry, it really went on to various verticals. For instance, it went on to I worked in automobiles, I worked in FMCG companies, I worked in financial services company too, for instance. So wide vista of of various verticals that I worked across various hierarchies.
Right.
Starting as a management trainee, going across and running a company too, for instance, as such. My major forte has been in the area of marketing and brand management,
Right.
where I was fortunate enough to launch such wonderful brands like Barbie dolls in India, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe,
Right.
the boys' toys for kids, Hot Wheels. I launched Puma high performance sports shoes. And in my stint in advertising, I have been fortunate enough to work with Unilever's Lux
Right.
for a good period of time, and then went on to launch Smirnoff in this country, Mercedes-Benz in this country in 1995.
Wonderful.
Then I worked with the Tata Group in their financial services business in mutual funds as
Right.
head of marketing.
Right.
And my last industry experience was with Yes Bank as
Okay.
country head customer experience.
Wonderful.
So across various verticals, across various platforms, and of course various hierarchies that I worked. Now I am a full-time faculty with the KJ Somaiya Institute of Management. It's amongst the 20 best business schools in the country. This is for the last 14 years or thereabout I have been with this institute. But besides that, I also take courses in IIM Kolkata, IIM Trichy, IIT SOM, and of course my alma mater, which is Bajaj Institute, where I've been lecturing since 1988 as such, and I keep doing that every Sunday, for instance. So that has been my background as far as industry experience is concerned. And also, of course, now the academia in which I am now seeped into for the last 14 years or thereabout as such.
Right, right. Wonderful. 20 minutes of a conversation with you, and we wouldn't even be able to scratch the surface of Professor Isaac Jacob. So lucky to be in conversation with you. Professor, tell us, besides being an academic, where do you gather your inspiration from to become an author?
I still remember, Shubhika, it actually started way back in 2010 when I got a call from Pearson India,
Okay.
the publishers.
Right.
And they wanted an academic who had brand management experience
Right.
in order to co-author Kevin Lane Keller's iconic, globally best-selling textbook, Strategic Brand Management.
Right.
And we started on that. I, along with my other co-author, Dr. Ambi Parameswaran, we started the work together. And by 2011, we were able to basically launch the third edition
Okay.
of this most wonderful book, for instance, from and that is for the Indian version
Right.
of the strategic brand management, because Pearson wanted to Indianize, the strategic brand management, because otherwise they were not finding much traction, because there's no linking with the Indian MBA students, for instance, as such. It was a runaway success, the third edition. Then that actually prompted them to bring about the fourth edition, which we launched in 2016 or thereabout as such. And the fifth edition was just launched in the month of April of this year, and Professor Keller himself was on a Zoom conference with us, launched it in India as such. Then a wonderful journey as an author, for instance, as such. We Indianized it, we brought in a lot of Indian cases and case studies into the strategic brand management book, and it's such a wonderful journey that has been there, that it is now today used in about 240 odd top business schools in the country in India. This is as per the latest statistics I've got from Pearson India, for instance, as such, which is, I think, a wonderful journey into being an author, for instance, as such. Besides that, of course, being an academic, it is one of our KRAs to do original research, for instance, as such. And I've been fortunate enough to basically have my research papers in some of those top-notch journals in the world, for instance, the Journal of Business Research, the Journal of Promotion Management, the Journal of International Consumer Marketing, for instance, as such. These are, and also the Journal of Marketing for Higher Education, as such. We did a wonderful branding exercise, a research paper on branding and university, for instance, as such. Because being an academic, I think you have to bring in original work into the class.
Right.
And the book, as well as the research papers that one has been able to really contribute to furthering of academic knowledge,
Right.
and human capital, for instance, as such, intellectual capital, has really we take it down into the classroom. So it actually brings in a lot of linkages with original work has been done to the students, for instance. So that's been the journey as far as being a academic is concerned, being a author is concerned, and of course the way that it has now panned out as into a researcher of some standing, I would say, for instance, as such. Okay, so that's it.
Wonderful. Professor, give us some insights on this brilliant book. I see that what we have here on the table is the Strategic Brand Management, which is the 5th edition. So tell us a little bit about the book and the kind of research that has gone into building this brilliant book.
Yes. In fact, this is as I mentioned, this is Professor Kevin Lane Keller's brilliant contribution to brand management. He is the brand guru, for instance. And his researches across the 30 or 3 decades or more than 3 decades that he has been done is all distilled into this particular book as such. As I mentioned, it's an iconic book, for instance, the best-selling book in the world as far as brand management is concerned as such. It takes you through brick by brick understanding as to how you build a strong brand, for instance. And it is actually based on his model that he has created, which is the customer-based brand equity model, called in shorter term, it's called the CBB model, for instance, which has now been validated as perhaps the best model in the world as far as building brand management is concerned, or building brands are concerned, for instance. So he starts with the very basics of what branding is all about, looking at it from the point of view of what are the brand elements, for instance, how do you create a brand name to start with, which is the most basic form of creating a brand asset, for instance. So it is basically looking at how would you basically give a brand name, how would you build a very strong logo for the brand, for instance, which is more memorable than perhaps anything else, what are the brand slogans which are there, which is of course the foundation of how you really build up a brand as such. Then of course it gets into building up on the basis of the most recent areas of branding and marketing that has progressed, for instance. See, The book also speaks about experiential marketing, how to bring in a huge amount of experiences that today the current customers need to have,
Right.
for instance, as such. So experiential marketing, permission marketing, it is also looking at mass customization. For instance, you can today have your own Nike shoe created, for instance, with the kind of features and designs that you want, for instance, so that is mass customization. So these are all the areas which today the current level of brand management really looks at, because it's gone beyond far ahead of just about informing customers to engaging customers and making customers more loyal, and therefore making customers even brand advocates, for instance, as such. All these things get distilled into brand equity, for instance, and we would all have heard about brand equity, which is of course the value of a brand for an organization. For instance, today the most valuable brand in the world is Apple, for instance, as such. And if you were to sell, or you want to sell the brand name Apple, or the property of brand Apple, it will cost you over 300 odd million US dollars, for instance. That's the brand value of a brand, for instance.
Correct.
How to manage that, how to build it up, how to continue as the most valuable brand is what the book actually speaks about as such.
Each edition of the book
Each edition
brings
of
its
the book.
own. Yeah.
We also used a lot of Indian cases, for
Right.
instance, for the third, fourth, and the current fifth edition, for instance.
Okay.
The important factor is that unless and until you can actually link up with the with really understanding how brands work, and brands which are very closer to one's heart, for instance. Students and practitioners don't seem to really link up with the book, for instance. So that's been one of our contribution. The basic theories of brand management, we have kept it completely as Professor Keller has actually put together, because they're not theory beyond what Professor Keller has actually been able to build up, for instance. But what we have done is really added value to the theory by building up Indian brands.
Right.
That makes the reader understand each of the presents and the concepts that has been used here in a much holistic manner. That's the thing. In the fifth edition, of course, Professor Keller has brought in Professor Vanitha Swaminathan.
Okay.
She is the digital expert. She is from the University of Pittsburgh, the Katz Business School in Pittsburgh as such. So the fifth edition takes the brand management, textbook into the next level, for instance, because the digital world, as you know very well, you are on the digital format BCWS, and how this has really taken off into the next, level of what the brands are taken to, for instance, as such. So it brings in a lot of digital focus into the fifth edition as such. That's the contribution which Dr. Vanitha Swaminathan has brought to this particular edition.
That is absolutely wonderful, Professor. I just want to let the audience know that initially we were conversations with Shubhika, and it is Professor Isaac Jacob that mentioned to us we need to narrow down our brand image and our brand value, because we're having business conversations with people, and that's how we became Business Conversations with Shubhika. Thank you so much for that insight. It has helped us so much in creating a niche and creating the right brand awareness in the market, so to speak. So thank you so much for that wonderful insight. Professor, we would love to know more about your principal author, Kevin Lane Keller, the branding guru. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Kevin Lane Keller is the E.B. Osborne Professor of Marketing at the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth, an Ivy League college. He takes courses in brand management with the MBA students and lectures in the executive programs on marketing topics globally. He is currently the Associate Dean at the business school where he is working. Professor Keller has been a faculty at the Stanford University, the University of California at Berkeley, and the University of North Carolina, and visiting professor at the Duke University in the US. Professor Keller has served as a consultant and advisor on the world's most successful brands, such as Accenture, American Express, Disney, Ford, Intel, Levi Strauss, LL Bean, Nike, Procter and Gamble, Samsung, Nivea, Caterpillar, Colgate, Exxon Mobil, General Mills, Sab Miller, Starbucks, and many more. He has also taken senior management programs at the Coca-Cola company, at GE, in Hyundai, with Google, with IBM, with Microsoft, Nestle, Novartis, PepsiCo, the companies go on. In fact, I think many more of them are there. Professor Keller's research citations today is an astronomical 2,47,777 as of date. He is also the co-author with Professor Philip Kotler, the classic book on marketing management, used in all the business schools and for management courses across the globe.
That is absolutely wonderful and so inspiring to know all of this about Professor Kevin Lane Keller. I've had the privilege of communicating with him on email once, a very long time ago, but I eagerly wait for the day when I can meet him in person. So, Professor, tell us, how does one stay updated with the latest tools and the latest trends that are available today in ensuring that our brand stands out in creating effective brand management strategy?
It's a very relevant question. It's something which brand managers lose a lot of sleepless nights in doing. And now in this particular era of digitalization, it is now becoming furiously faster in terms of the kind of trend changes and things like that, which is happening. But fact of the matter is that the other side of the coin is that this entire process of digitalization has been able to build up a very strong understanding of customers because of the fact that today we got tools and techniques that are available to understand customer needs, which is of course the basis on which any brand management actually builds up strategies, for instance. So that's number one, understanding customer needs, wants, desires, and how they are actually moving.
Right.
That's the first one. The second one, of course, is the newer tools and techniques that are available, which is now making it more impactful if you understand customer needs better and understand certain techniques and tools that are now trending, for instance, as far as brand management, now to use brand management is concerned. Because gone are the days where you actually inform customers, for instance. You have to take the customer, walk them through the entire process that you would look at, from informing to creating desire to creating linkages with the customers and convincing the customers that the brand that you are marketing is the one that meet the customer needs better than your competitors, for instance. And then converting the customers, for instance. It's the entire walkthrough that you will take. There are a lot of these lead management systems that have come through, for instance. Very highly technology driven, such tools are today available, for instance. Besides that, of course, today brand managers are looking at customers to become their brand advocates, for instance. It's not only the consumption of the product that actually makes a difference, but makes them brand advocates, or what is called, they become spokespeople for the brand, for instance, as such. And that's taking brand management into the next level, where the brand perhaps gets owned to a great extent by the consumers themselves, as such. So that's how the new age marketing tools and techniques are built up, for instance. As I mentioned earlier, tools like experiential marketing, tools like permission marketing, for instance, tools like mass customization. All these things are making customers experience the brand better and therefore become brand advocates, so that it can take the brand into the next level itself. For instance, brand becomes actually the messenger for your marketing activities, for instance. That's how these tools are today moving ahead. But keeping a agile watch on how customer needs and wants and desires are shifting is perhaps the starting point of understanding customer needs and how it can be really fulfilled through marketing and brand management techniques as such.
That's absolutely wonderful, Professor. We have so many various entrepreneurs that are watching, and it is so important. It's such a relevant topic. So, tell us, what are the basic steps for a startup, for the various entrepreneurs watching? What are the basic steps that we need to ensure we take into consideration when building our brand?
Okay. Shuka, very relevant question to say the least. And I think it's the most important question for everyone, be it entrepreneurs, be it professionals, be it even for managing your own personal brand, for instance. You get the point. Because we do a lot of personal branding activities also for that matter as such.
Right.
So the beginning, of course, the beginning of any brand management is to create what is called brand salience as such. That is the foundation of any brand, for instance. Like you mentioned, business conversation with Shubhika as such. The business part of it is basically flagging the category you're in, because you're not looking at conversation other than business, for instance, but that's the focus of your business, for instance.
Right.
And the other, of course, is the part of your branding exercise, for instance, which is the conversation that you're building up. You're building conversation to further other brands amongst relevant target audiences, for instance, as such. So when you look at Professor Kevin Lane Keller's CBB model, as he is termed it, which is, of course, I have mentioned, he is perhaps the most well-known and perhaps well-used model on a global basis, the customer-based brand equity model. It starts with actually creating brand salience, which is at the bottom end of brand management action, for instance.
Right.
The next level, the model looks at both the left brain and the right brain. The left brain, of course, is the more scientific part, or the more hardcore part. It's the numbers part of it, or whatever you would want to call it. And he also looks at the right brain, for instance, which is the softer side, the emotions, the feelings, because when you buy a brand, both have got equal weightage in some cases, for instance, as such, when you really buy a brand.
Right.
So Kevin Keller uses both the left brain and the right brain in right proportions to build brand based on, of course, the category that you're actually marketing, for instance.
Okay.
So once you create salience at the bottom level, for instance, you move ahead. So on the left part, which is the left brain part of it, you have what is called, and he calls it the brand performance, for instance.
Okay.
The harder core of, say, maybe the design in an automobile, or perhaps the product features in any product, for instance.
Right.
That is the product performance as such. How does the product perform? Besides that, along with that, you have also, as you see in the graph that is displayed, you have the brand imagery, because what is the kind of imagery that you build up, for instance. If you look at a brand like Mercedes-Benz, for instance, the imagery that you create is status and success, for instance. You get the point.
Right.
So that's the second level that you go up, for instance. The next level that the model speaks about is on the left hand side. You have, as you see, you have brand judgment as such. It could be judgment on product quality, for instance. It could be on judgment on brand reputation, for instance. And then on the right hand side, which is the left brain or right brain part of it, you have the emotional quotient, which is there, which is the brand feelings, for instance. What do you feel about the brand as such? So then you move ahead, and once you are able to really go through the next level that we spoke about, which is brand judgment and brand feelings, you go up to the apex of the pyramid, which is at the top end, that is called brand resonance. It has to resonate with your customers.
Absolutely.
You get the point?
Yes.
And that brand resonance comes through lot many years or lot many significant amount of marketing activities that you build up, and this is basically you're actually having a consonance with the brand and the target audience, for instance, as such.
Right.
You get that is called brand resonance, and to keep that brand resonance running is a big ask, for instance, in brand management, because you can't let customers down in any form. For instance, that resonance should basically keep on going ahead, for instance, as such. So that's the customer based brand equity model from a technical perspective, how you build up. But it is your marketing activity that takes it right from saliency through the various stages to brand resonance, for instance, building up a brand resonance as such. Once you create brand resonance, then you find a whole lot of loyalty build up, so the kind of trust that is there, the kind of advocacy, the kind of attachment that customers have with the brand will be kept on for a much longer period of time. But to get to that pinnacle of the brand resonance model is a big ask as such. And a lot of brands whom we also know for sure, brands like your Red Bull, for instance, a very highly resonating brand amongst its target audience, for instance. Yuppies, the people who work hard and play hard or party hard, for instance, resonates with them, for instance. But to keep that resonance running is a very big important step for brand management to take. So that's how the brands are built up, for instance. The CBB model, as I mentioned, is the best known model for brand building, for instance.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Professor Isaac Jacob. I wish we could have continued this conversation. There's so many more questions that we want to ask you, but we will bring you in front of the camera in another season and discuss so much more about this vast but very relevant topic called effective brand management. But for now, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having you on the sets of Business Conversations with Shubhika again.
Thank you very much, Shubhika, for having me over on this particular wonderful platform that you have created, Business Conversation with Shubhika. And I see that it's a very trending platform that you have created here. And I see some of your episodes which are wonderfully well done in terms of taking the brands forward, for instance, for your clients. And all the very, very best. BCWS is a great platform. And once again, I wish you all the very best for building a very strong brand in BCWS. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, all with your guidance and your blessing. Thank you so much. And just like that, we come to the end of yet another episode of Business Conversations with Shubhika, a platform for you to market and grow your business. Don't forget to like, to subscribe and follow us on all our social media channels.